see in a bit is the real challenge. So I'm going to pull out some analyst research that's been done. You won't be surprised to learn that there's lots and lots of research that's been done that shows that business intelligence is a good thing. So that's great to know. I'm sure you'll sleep more sound tonight knowing that. But also on the value of pervasive BI. What's the value of having it used extensively around the organisation rather than just with a small number of people? So what Aberdeen Group done, and they've done a bit of research on this, is they've sort of divided up organisations into two sets of three groups. First of all, they've looked at their performance against their peers. So they've basically divided organisations into high performers, sort of average performers, and low performers. And they've also looked at them in terms of their use of business intelligence, and they've put them into those that are pervasive, which is, I think they've set up something like more than 60% of management and staff have access to business intelligence. They've got the moderate usage, where we'd probably be around the norm, around the 20 to 30%, like we've seen, which is the average. And then we've got organisations where probably the penetration of business intelligence is very less than 10%, so it's very project-based, very sporadic. And what they found, what you won't be surprised to learn, is that the organisations with pervasive business intelligence are pretty much all the high performers, and the ones without it are all the laggards, all the ones that are low performers. So there's a clear correlation between organisational use of business intelligence and its performance, whichever way you measure it. But other things that they see is things like they see a decrease, a measurable, statistical, whatever, decrease in the time to information. So the time it takes a person to get hold of the information they need to do their job is measurably much lower in organisations with pervasive BI. So it's kind of on tap, as it were. And in fact, this is one of the sort of the key benefits of business intelligence. Actually, it's a bit prosaic, and often we don't like to talk about it because we like to sort of talk about the eureka moment where we discover something that nobody else has spotted about our organisation, and we can go ahead and fix it. We're a hero. But in actual fact, the most basic and common business benefit of business intelligence is just productivity. It's just people spend less time cutting and pasting information from one place to another, putting it into a spreadsheet and looking at it. That manual data integration, if you like, from all our different systems, that horrible, and I've been doing it myself, I've been working for a vendor, last week trying to bring in data from different places, to take hours, if not days. And often you can see somebody will spend 25% of their time just messing around with spreadsheets, getting data together. You can remove that by delivering information in an efficient way. And then the second one, this is when we get into sort of more higher value benefits, is they saw what they call a decrease in the time of decisions. So organisations with pervasive business intelligence make decisions more quickly than those without. And that's partly due to that, of course, partly because of the fact that they don't spend so much time getting data together, but equally, of course, because they have more trust in information, they can make decisions more confidently. So you don't kind of sit there double checking, triple checking with your colleagues. Is this data right? Does that look okay? All the stuff that we do, in a sort of day-to-day world. So measurable stuff there. And then the other thing is that they saw a 24% increase in, and I replaced the word efficiency there, it actually said profitability. It's an analyst, it's one size fits all, but I think profitability can equal efficiency in my mind. It's a bit of a simplistic view of the world, but if we're looking at just maximising the gap between our costs and our resource consumption, then we could, I think, argue that companies are more efficient. But the interesting thing, which is on this slide here, is that the cost per user of business intelligence with organisations with pervasive BI is lower than those that do it only sporadically or departmentally. So the more you do it, the cheaper it gets, effectively, is the message here. And what's happening is that organisations that have pervasive BI are doing it better than the organisations that don't have any kind of strategy, any sort of plan, any governance model in place to roll this technology and use this technology in the business. So you're into a horrible sort of spiral here, because these organisations are not getting any benefit from business intelligence. They're doing it badly and they're spending more money on it. So there's nothing there to like at all, really. That's just, inevitably a really bad situation to be in. And of course, the less benefit they get from it, the more it costs, the less they do of it, and it's just going to end up nowhere. So that's a really interesting thing. So you would have intuitively, I think, expected that pervasive BI would be expensive. You know, we're going to roll out all this software to all these people. That's going to cost us a lot of money. But baked into this is that they're doing it in a different way. They're doing it right, and they're doing it perhaps in a more structured and strategic way. And in actual fact, they can vastly reduce the costs involved compared to doing it incorrectly. So this is bringing up a bit of another research now, something called Competing on Analytics with Thomas Davenport, which I'll come back to later. Just trying to identify where the kind of business benefits come. You know, you can start here, look more bread and butter work. It's about, you know, reducing the cost of doing business at the lowest level, making us more productive and more efficient. Moving through to providing better information, and then in the end making better strategic decisions, and the organisation then moves forward with better productivity. Some other stats across the right hand side here. High performing organisations 5 times more likely to use business intelligence strategically in their business. Improved operating margin, we've already covered that. BI tools increase the productivity by 25%, so that's the average employee improvement in productivity. Again, that would depend on the job, of course, but overall. And then I think the clincher here is that bottom point there, which is that 80% of the companies that had pervasive BI had a formal BI organisation inside their company. It's usually called a competency centre or something equivalent. It's the governance group that manages the process of using information and getting that information out to the business. It sets the standard for reporting, it sets the standards for storing data. It's inevitable. Now, how it's created, it doesn't have to be a separate team. You can have virtual competency centres drawn from across the organisation. It can be in IT, it can be in business. There are pros and cons to all the models, and there's, you know, another hour's worth of presentation to talk about what that looks like. But typically, the organisations that are doing BI right have put together a team of people to manage it and do it, and to manage its rollout within the organisation. So what are the roadblocks to deployment? Well, this is a survey that's done pretty much every year by Information Week, and every year that I can remember. My memory isn't quite as good as it used to be, but as far as I can remember, complexity of BI tools sits at #1 proudly as the main reason why only 28% of our organisation uses business intelligence more widely. I think finally that's broken. I think there's a bit of a lag, I think, as it sort of permeates into the market, but I think the technology can solve that problem now. And I think we're going to start seeing other issues as we move down. Now, the cost is going to be there because that's inevitable. Data quality, you can see, is there. Difficulty access to relevant timelines. So there are all sorts of other issues that sort of start popping up. The skills, it starts getting very complicated. But I think this one, I think we can take as read, and I think we can solve that using the technology. And I think Danny, in his session on dashboards, will give you a good example. If you go to that breakout session, the sort of easy to use interface that you can provide to a business person if you're in IT and you're struggling in that area. And the Forrester research also just only 32% said that their software was easy to use. So it's been an ongoing problem, but I do believe we've got it cracked. I think taking over now as the big barriers to deployment will be the cultural issues, I think, rather than the technology issues. Technology's changed so much in the last 10 to 15 years that the tools bear no relationship to what they look like. You know, we've got web-based applications, they're friendly to use. And even as vendors, we're under so much pressure now to provide what we call the consumerization of IT type interfaces. We know that applications, you know, love them or hate them, like Facebook and Twitter, are setting the standard for user interfaces. So the whole of the IT industry is under pressure to provide that kind of look and feel, that kind of our CEO, co-CEO, says we want to produce beautiful software. And if anybody's ever used SAP, you'll be scratching your head at that point. It's not my definition of beautiful. But that's our aim, you know, that's what we want to do. We know we have to do that because that's the way the IT market has changed the last few years. And as my daughter goes through the system, she goes into the world of work, she's going to look at the applications that we built proudly a few years ago, and I'll go, that's rubbish, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. You know. So that's a trend that's happening anyway, and that's inevitably will change the way the applications look. So I think it's inside our organisation and the culture. Do we have the skills? Are we still thinking in terms of silos? you know, when we do go about our business. But we're still running ourselves on spreadsheets. And if you've been to any IT presentation, you'll have 1,000 times you've heard the word sponsorship, you know, is important. But it is important that somebody fairly senior in the organisation sets the tone, if you like, in terms of what we want to do with information. Are we going to be an analytical organisation? Are we going to be an agency, a group of people that uses data, if you like, to be productive and efficient? That's the thing, really. And that's hard to happen. But on the technology side, the key thing here is that all the people with pervasive BI deliver BI in what we call a self-service way. So it's not centralised, it's not heavily centrally managed. They deliver interfaces that people can use to get data themselves, basically. That's absolutely key, because you can't scale up. IT cannot just roll out BI to every person and carry on delivering handwritten reports to every individual. It just doesn't work. There's no scalability there. So you've got to, if you like, devolve the work onto the business user, if you're on it. And the only way you can do that is provide them with the means of getting their own data, doing their own reports, and obviously that sets a certain standard in terms of ease of use. Other ways that TDWI covered, and this is a few years ago, and it's important that it's 2008 in the moment, integration with Office, so that, you know, there are always some people that prefer that environment, so your BI system isn't necessarily going to be a standalone environment. It should be something that integrates into tools that the business users are happy with. Dashboards are a fantastic way of communicating metrics and key performance indicators. If there's one thing that breaks that strategy and execution gap more than anything else, it's a dashboard. You know, these are our strategic goals, this is how we're doing against them, and this is actually your KPIs, and hopefully their KPIs are meant to somehow align. But I know there are organisations that help, you know, setting KPIs and metrics actually is the hardest thing you do in business intelligence now. Understanding what to measure, how to measure it, and what the impactful ones are is the key thing. And most organisations need a bit of help there, I think, as well, in terms of setting that up. But the one thing that's missing from this slide, because it's 2008, is mobile. You know, it's always difficult when you're in the middle of an IT kind of explosion to kind of figure out, is it a fad or a trend? And I've lived through quite a few to know that you have to be pretty cautious about whether the current rise and domination with all things, you know, tablets and smartphones is a fad or a trend. But my gut feeling now is it's a trend. I just don't see it going away. And in fact, Apple, you know, love them or loathe them, probably are going to be the organisation that did this. The tablet, the iPad, is the thing that's got management thinking, oh, I can see, you know, this sort of view of my business, I can see a dashboard with key performance indicators, I can carry it under my arm, I've got all the information wherever I go. It could be that mobile devices are the key actually to breaking this sort of 28%, 30% barrier on pervasive business intelligence. So it could be that actually technology is going to give a little boost over the bridge, as it were, and take it forward. But it does look like this. If you see people, if you give this to anybody, business intelligence report on an iPad, and you see their faces light up, almost like children at Christmas. It's quite amazing, but their brains are working about the possibilities. We've got so many people that are not tied to a desk that this looks like it could have quite a profound change in terms of, I think, where we go. Most organisations are planning now for this big wave of mobile devices going to come into the organisation. They'll come in, you know, personally owned smartphones, people will be asking for information on there, they'll be bought sometimes by the organisation themselves. Smart companies are doing that actually. I mean, this is the thing, you don't have to go and buy an iPad for every employee in the organisation, let's face it, who can afford that? But you can give people the, if you like, the okay to go and buy their own, as long as you can connect to the corporate data sources. That's